Hi, everybody. It's Martha Creek. You can contact me directly, marthacreek.com. There's also free videos and podcast and resources, newsletter, other parts of the teaching there, all for free at marthacreek.com that you're welcome to have, to use, to teach from, live from, share, send, email, whatever you can do to get the teachings out into the world, which is my own vision. My mission is to serve those who serve, that would be you, and to get these teachings, practical, applicable teachings, another way of being, a find a way mindset out to the whole of humanity, and to be that kind of support for that. So use it any way you can. I'm opening today's session with a reading from a poet that I love named David Whyte. And his name is spelled W-H-Y-T-E, David Whyte. So many of you will be familiar with him probably. This is entitled Disappointment. Disappointment is inescapable but necessary. Disappointment is inescapable but necessary. A misunderstood mercy. Disappointment is a misunderstood mercy. And when approached properly, disappointment, when approached properly, is an agency for transformation. An agency for transformation and the hidden underground. Disappointment is an engine of trust when used properly. Disappointment is an engine of trust and generosity in the human life, in my human life, in your human life. Disappointment, inescapable, and when used properly, an agent of transformation. The attempt to create a life devoid of disappointment, keyword attempt. The attempt to create a life devoid of disappointment is the attempt to avoid the vulnerabilities that make the conversations of life real, that make the conversations of life moving and lifelike and human and true to our humanness. It is the attempt to avoid our own necessary and mercy-filled heartbreak. The attempt to avoid our own necessary heartbreak and our merciful heartbreak. To be disappointed is to reassess ourselves and our inner world. To reassess the world, our inner world, to reassess ourselves in relationship to the world, and to be called to the larger foundational reality, to be called into, aligned with the greater reality, the truth of it, the foundational reality of it, that lies beyond our sense of self, that lies beyond our false sense of self. And up until now, the false self that we had only projected upon the outer world. Not a true self, but a false projected self. What we call disappointment, we're calling it that. We're interpreting as that, giving it meaning as that. What we call disappointment may be just the first stage of emancipation. Disappointment may be just the first stage of emancipation. An emancipation into the next greatest pattern of existence, the greatest next iteration of ourselves, the next greatest iteration of life, of our life experience. To be disappointed is to reappraise. not only reality itself, but our foundational relationship to it. To reassess our relationship to the pattern of events. To reassess our relationship to the pattern of places, to the patterns of people, to the patterns of events, places, people, to everything, to reevaluate, to reassess our relationship to that, of everything, everybody that surrounds us. And which, until we are properly disappointed, we have misunderstood. We've misunderstood them. We have misinterpreted them. All of them. Disappointment is the first fruitful foundation of genuine heartbreak. Necessary heartbreak. Which we risk ourselves. In a friendship, we risk ourselves in marriage. We risk ourselves in following our dreams, our devotions. We risk ourselves this disappointment. A disappointment with life itself, a genuine heartbreak at life itself, and that it wasn't the life of my fantasy. The measure of our courage is the measure of our willingness to embrace disappointment. The measure of your courage is the measure of your willingness to embrace disappointment, to turn toward it, to allow it, rather than turning away, denying it, suppressing it, disowning it. So this message is inspired by this poem. I'm not reading the poem. I'm reading my experience of the poem, which is so moving and poignant to me again and again and again. So instead of turning away from disappointment, to again now, starting now, to turn toward it. The opposite of suppressing, depressing, disowning, denying it. To allow for it, give it some space. The understanding that every real conversation of life involves being heartbroken somewhere along the way. Somewhere along the way, in every meaningful interaction, in every meaningful friendship, marriage, relationship, job, profession, will involve heartbreak somewhere along the way. And there is no sincere path that we can follow, not one path that's sincere, that's integrous, that we can follow, that we will not be fully and immeasurably let down somewhere along the way. Will be brought to earth. I'll be brought to earth. You'll be brought to earth somewhere along the way. In every sincere path. And there where what initially looks like betrayal, rejection, abandonment, initially looks like that, betrayal, abandonment, rejection, is precisely what eventually puts real ground under our feet. Solid ground. So the disappointment itself brings me again and again and again to solid ground. The question in disappointment, the question for me, for you, is whether we will allow it to bring us to solid ground. Will you allow it to bring you to a firmer sense of yourself, the truth self, what is true about yourself? The part of you that's immune from situations, that's immune from myth, from fantasy, to the higher room, solid ground. And to bring you a surer sense of the world, a surer sense that life will unfold on its own terms. a surer sense of that, a deeper trust in that. And what is good and possible for us in that world. To look toward that, to look forward to that. What is good for me in this? What could I do in relationship to this? What is possible for me in this? And whether we experience it only as a wound, more woundedness that will make us retreat further and further in a spiral of darkness and despair, from further participating, from cutting off from life. Disappointment is a friend to transformation. Disappointment is a friend to transformation, a call to accuracy, to what is true, what is actual, what is factual, and a call to generosity, to be more generous with myself, to be more generous with others as I'm able to be more generous with myself. It will call us then, and through that generosity, that assessment of ourselves and others, to reassess others, to reassess the relationships, to reassess the dynamics. A true and accurate test of sincerity. Is this true for me? And disappointment is the catalyst, a catalyst, and for me, a catapult. A catalyst, a catapult of resilience, which I highly, highly value. And it's my favorite thing about human beings. The resiliency of spirit that then outpictures as a generosity of spirit, as grit and determination and an open mindset, less of a fixed mindset. Disappointment is just the initial meeting with a frontier of an ever-changing, ever-evolving life. It's the frontier, the edge of the frontier, the initial meeting of that frontier of an ever-evolving life. It's also an invitation to reality, to see reality, to tell the truth about reality, to live from reality, rooted in reality. An invitation out of the myth, out of the BS, out of the belief systems, out of the inertia of the old archaic beliefs. An invitation to reality, a new relationship with reality. One which we expected to be a particular way. We actually believed it was going to be the way we wanted. Out of a way that we expected it to turn out as planned. And sometimes it will, and sometimes it won't. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it won't, sometimes it don't. Reality. And a true growing ourselves up in that, to the reality of that. That the way that we expected life to be a particular way, a certain way, the way we wanted, the way it should be, the way we need it to be is false. False ideas, false concepts, false mental constructs. And it turns out to be another way. So we didn't get what we wanted. We didn't get what we believed we needed. We didn't believe what we should have happened. And then past that, it's often more difficult than we thought, more difficult than we imagined, more difficult, but not always. Sometimes our thoughts make it much more difficult than it actually is. So disappointment, an invitation to reality, to live from reality, and an invitation that even in the losses, even in the difficulties, even in the disappointment, to strangely, radically and strangely, in the end, find the reward. There was reward. Disappointment was also rewarding. So take a pause here and imagine your life willing, accepting that there'll be times of disappointment, that it's true and natural for our human learning processes, that it's part of our humanness, that there's no one with a pulse immune from disappointment. So it's not a matter of if, just when, to what degree, and what's going to be the cause, the circumstance, the situation. What are we going to blame it on? And what it would be like in you to exercise this power to say, sometimes it'll go like I think, and sometimes it won't. And accepting that holds all the power of the universe. Some will include me, some won't. So I use this to say it's my greatest spiritual lesson of all time so far. And that is SW, SW, SW. Some will, some won't. So what am I going to be in this experience? Some will, some won't. So what am I going to be? So what am I going to do? So what else could I see about this? Some will invite me, some won't. So what? So what holds all the power? Some will like me, some won't. Normal, natural, human processes. So what am I going to do in this environment? What am I going to do in this situation? Some will include me, some will exclude me. Include, exclude, some will, some won't. What am I going to make of this? How am I going to interpret this? So my salvation, my liberation, my freedom, my peace, my joy, my bliss, my imagination, my creativity, my innovation, all lies in that middle ground of so what? What then? And accepting the polarities of the way of it. And I don't have to like it a bit, and you don't either. And you don't have to love it for sure. But if you integrate it and allow for it, include it, accept it, then you're not going to be as blown over by it either. You're not going to have experiences of having the rug pulled out from under you when it doesn't go the way you thought or the way you planned. So disappointment and the reward of disappointment for my awakening, for my choosing again and again and again. Amen, amen, amen. So disappointment comes, make space, transform. Disappointment comes, what gift did it deliver? Thank you, friend. Begin again. So I love you. I bless you. I lift you up. I hold you in prayer. I thank you for the ways you serve. I know who you are. I know what you are. I know how you serve. And I bow to you and I thank you. And I join you. Together we can do what we cannot do alone. MarthaCreek.com, if I can serve you in any way. Blessings and love.